Okay, there's been some confusion about how the repeating sequences work. And I'm going to dumb this down for you in layman's terms. I'm going to show you using bars patterns because that's really what you guys only understand. And it's the fastest and most simple way to paint this picture of what's actually happening here. I'm not going to show you my proprietary sequencing method. It's what I've developed over the last 2.5 years alongside Kane and Oliver. We came up with it. It is unbelievably accurate. Are we 100% accurate? No, but we are 70, 80+% of the time when recognizing when there is a macro or super macro POI incoming, matching up the sequence with the options chain with the macroeconomic narrative. And that is the only way you can do it. There is no more narrowing down. And while I have educated, have had educated guesses on when macro POIs are going to be to the day, within a 2-day window, a 3-day window, even a 1-hour window I've hit. It doesn't happen like that all the time. Majority wise of the time, it's usually like a 2-week window of sorts to understand that we are approaching a moment within the algorithmic repeating sequence in which buying volume or selling volume is going to be injected via shares or via the options chain within that security. Okay, so quickly, let me pull the repeating sequence up because this is what you guys know and have been viewing for the last 3 years. Okay, we have tens of thousands of data points backing up this thesis. It is not my opinion. Okay, I only go by the data and we're not biased at all. We trade both ways when we get to POIs. Okay, I don't care if I've said to you that I believe that this next POI may play inverse. If it doesn't, it does not matter. We straddle every single POI, okay? Okay, so let's go over the repeating sequence. I'm just gonna show you guys what you have been looking at for the last 3 years. We have tens of thousands of data points to back this up. This is not my opinion. This is what has happened. We know within the repeating sequence that when we get to these POIs, that's when things really move. So for the people that don't understand at home, and I have explained this multiple times in the many YouTube videos and Twitter videos that I posted, there is an algorithmic sequence controlling both the meme stocks, the Mag 7, yields, volatility products, bonds, basically everything across the board. And they all have their own repeating sequence within. Now, these sequences are justified by liquid testing on the algorithm. Now, if you're looking at a sequence and you just want to understand it very basically, okay, this sequence is within itself constantly, okay, in shrinking iterations within phase Z of distribution and expanding iterations within phase Z of accumulation. Now, it repeats unbelievably with stellar accuracy, okay, across the board, over and over again. Okay, you can see very clearly it's, right, Jan, June, Jan, June, right? Jan, June, Jan, June, right? It's the same repeating sequence over and over again. Jan, March, June, sell off. Jan, March, June, sell off on every single time frame, 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour, daily, weekly, monthly. Okay? Now these sequences shrink all the way down to the 1 second chart. So when I say things to you, guys, like it is not possible to know where things are going when you get down to those micro levels, this is why. Okay? It is so small that it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. You know what I'm saying? Like you will never know on which of these POIs, and I mean, let's zoom in really quick. You would never know if we're tracking a stock. Let's say like, let's say the move that Root just made recently. Hold on. Okay, so let's say the move that Root made recently. All right, before it got to its June run. This is over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, right? Until you get to the point where you hit your super macro POI and the thing actually explodes. Now with Root, because it's a stock that nobody is looking at, there is no news to justify this move. This run was an insane 1,100%. No news, no options chain activity whatsoever. No calls, no gamma ramp, nothing. This has happened not only with Root, but about 10 other stocks I could think of off the top of my head over the last 3 years. The stocks that move the most are the ones that are about to hit their June fractal or January fractal on the super macro that have zero options activity. That is because there is zero eyes on it. They don't want to draw any attention to the stock. Now, with GameStop, AMC, all these other memes that you guys know, it doesn't work like that, okay? It doesn't work like that because there are too many eyes on them. And GameStop and AMC have a very specific narrative, which I believe, thesis-wise to be, is your massive liquidity grab from retail as your largest hedge of all time in stock market history before the SOFR rate goes to an unsustainable percentage level, before yields go above 20% and the derivatives bubble bursts and they start to plant your World War III narrative and fucking aliens and, Grand Theft Auto 6, right? Like all these things to distract you from the fact that it is the derivatives bubble that is your main play here. And the meme basket, what I believe is your massive exit liquidity vehicle. And you will see that in the coming years. So let's go back to GameStop really quick. And I want to talk about how these POIs are impossible to predict to the 1 minute candle. Okay. These POIs, like I was talking about with Root, are impossible to predict to the 1 minute candle because they shrink all the way down to the 1 second chart. Okay, so if you're sitting here and you know that there's a road, and this is your road, that repeats constantly over and over and over again. The only times POI is justified to the up or downside on stocks that are aggressively viewed by the public is during major POIs. Okay, I'm sorry, the video is blocking it. 1 second. Is during major POIs, like so. Okay? Major POIs. These are exaggerated, violent moves to the up or downside that the algorithm, which is on a timing belt, deems necessary before it makes these big moves. Jan, March, June. Okay? When you zoom down, like think of it like a microscope or a telescope. When you zoom down to those smaller time frames, it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. You don't know when the January or June fractals are going to happen because it's such small price action on such a small time frame. You can't see it, and we don't know the math behind the algorithm, so we're going by geometry, right? We're measuring it by shapes. We're not measuring it with algorithmic math. Now, the sequence plays out, and it's based off your different time charts and the way candles work and things of that nature. But when it's zoomed in this far, no one knows. Not me, not anyone. The only person that knows is the company that created the algorithm that repeats, which is BlackRock. Okay? So the question is, how does Roaring Kitty know when to tweet to justify that POI? Because like I just showed you on Root, that POI plays out every single time. No matter what, it plays out, okay? No matter what. If there's a tweet, it doesn't matter. If there's option chain activity, it doesn't matter. That POI plays. The algorithm sends that security to the upside or downside violently within that POI, okay? So, to make it seem organic, okay? Mainstream media, which is also owned by BlackRock, Netflix, which is also owned by BlackRock, they paint this narrative like Roaring Kitty is this good guy. He just happened to come across a amazing play with high short interest and solid fundamentals and was beat down too much during the COVID pandemic. And they make him this paid actor to lead you guys into thinking that, oh my God, retail beat Wall Street. Retail beat Wall Street. Roaring Kitty led the charge. That's what you saw in the Netflix movie, right? Right, Dumb Money, the Netflix movie? That's what you guys saw. But we know factually, unarguably, that retail does not move markets. 96% of retail flow, options, and shares are moved to dark pools. If you look at any data metric on a day-to-day basis, I'm not talking about the OBV, I'm talking about how much money is moved to dark pools. It's something like 60, 70%. You're talking during these GameStop moves, billions of dollars, billions moved off the NYSE, okay? So it doesn't hit the tape and it doesn't affect the algorithm that is pre-programmed. So let's just look at the fractal with some common sense here, okay? There is a path that GameStop, AMC, they are all following this same path, okay? And every time you get to a major POI, mainstream media has to justify it on the TV to make it seem like the stock is moving up or down in that direction because of news. But it's not news that moves it, okay? And it's not retail that moves it. It is the algorithm itself. It's not even the options chain that moves it. Yes, sometimes options come in, puts written, calls bought, right? On the Mag 7 to justify these moves, to make it look like it's because of the options chain that a gamma ramp was created and they sent it. But like I just showed you on root, that is not how it factually works. So my question for you and every other, the millions of shareholders, the billions of people that are watching this on TV that think it's news-based, okay, is how do the news releases line up to match every single major POI on the micro, macro, and super macro timeframes, right? The 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, the 1 hour, 4 hour, the daily, weekly, monthly. It always, the bigger the POI, the bigger the news article has to be to justify it, because the larger the move. Understand? So let's look at GameStop really quick. I'm going to show you guys, right? This entire time, okay? Let's get rid of the fractal so you guys can just see it, right? This entire time, there has been no major news releases whatsoever. During this time, that is when the derivatives chain and the options chain have been pushed down, their premiums smashed down to pennies on the dollar, right? On your weekly or 2-week trades, etc. That is when your most profitable trade was. That is the people that hit for, 10,000%, 20,000%. They bought right here when the chain was smashed down and those options came in incredibly cheap. Now, 3 years of no communication whatsoever from Keith. 3 years. And guys, it's 3 years during phase D and E of distribution, okay? This is phase D, right? Leading into phase E, all the way down to your spring. No communication. Why? Because it justifies the fractal. It justifies the repeating fractal that has been put in place during phase D and E as the fractal is repeating and descending. Lower low, lower low, lower low, going down all the way. He's not meant to come back here. If he is your paid actor and he comes in, that could justify the fractal to the upside, which is not what BlackRock wants during phase D and phase E. They want it to drop. So they purposely keep Keith off of the mainstream media. They keep him off of the main plot while the algorithm finishes distribution, okay? It's very easy to understand if you understand how Wyckoff accumulation and distribution work. Now, let's go back to our most recent price action. I'll label this for you very clearly so you can see what's going on here. Let's pretend that we have no idea. Let's pretend that we're in the middle of May, right? We're here. We have no idea where GameStop is about to go. Let's pretend like we have no idea, okay? So we pull up our repeating fractal, we look at it, and unfortunately, I can't explain to you where to place the repeating fractal, okay? Because that is what we figured out. And I'm not going to hand you guys billion-dollar information. I love you very much, but I have to be at the helm of this thing because the information's just too dangerous. I can't just give it away for free. I don't want to teach it in the Discord. But we knew where to place it, okay? So we knew that the January fractal was coming up, and we knew that it was going to fucking explode, but we didn't know what the news was to justify it. Roaring Kitty comes back after 3 years, and that was your news. That was your news. Here, and I labeled it for you, okay? This is when he came back, right on the launch pad. Now, I have the daily pattern pulled up on the fractal bars, but he came back on the 1 minute candle, okay? He can't know, like I just explained to you guys, he can't know which 1 minute candle to tweet on to justify, because this launch pad fractal, it can go, let's say this is price action, right? This can go like this. for another 6 months, right? So how does he know at what 1 minute candle to come in to justify the blast that we had, which was multiple hundreds of percent? It's because he's being told ahead of time. He's being used. He is their paid actor, okay? BlackRock tells him, this is when you come in to justify the fractal. Like I just showed you in Root, it doesn't matter what news is dropped. It doesn't matter if the options chain is loaded. That is not why the stock runs. The stock runs because the algorithm sends it on POIs. Point blank, period. That is how this has been working for 3 years straight. I have an unlimited amount of examples for you on AMC's chart. We're talking about GameStop right now. So let's go through it, okay? Step by step. He comes back, he tweets on the launch pad, and you get your massive, massive rip. 292%. I think it was even more higher than that. I think it was 400% in after hours, whatever it was. And then the fractal proceeds to play out, right? With stellar accuracy. Stellar accuracy. You get to the next point in the fractal, okay? And here's your run. Here's your next bar so you guys can see. I know it's hard to see it. This is on the daily. See it? Okay? That's your next run. I know it looks small in the fractal, but you don't use the fractals to justify size and price range. You just use them to justify timing. And I talk about this in my Discord constantly. So he tweets the reverse Uno card, right? Right here. And then what happens next? Justifies to the upside. Another rip, right? Your 90% rip, which immediately pump and dumps all the way back, up 90%, down 40%, okay? So he's basically tweeting and leading you into pump and dumps to justify the repeating fractal. So it's Jan on your macro, right? Here's your Jan on your macro. And we're waiting for June because June is going to be bigger, right? But on the micro, on the smaller time frames, right, it's Jan, June. You see it? Clear as day. Clear as day, right? But you need news to justify Jan and June on the micro. So first news to justify Jan on the micro, which was here, was him tweeting the reverse Uno card. Okay, and as we make our June run in the fractal, off the Kitty tweet, Cohen dilutes, right? He comes up with this $75 million share offering, and then you get your major price action downward here. At the same time, on that Friday, GameStop randomly releases earnings early. The stock continues to drop for the next day into Monday, fulfilling your sequence, Jan, June, sell-off, Jan, June, sell-off, right? This is the part for the sell-off. And then we begin our next part of the sequence. And now we are sitting in the point of this kind of no man's land here until we get to March. That's your next major POI, okay? So while we sit in no man's land, what happens? What happens? RKitty takes basically half profit yesterday. I think it was like 35 million, right? And everyone's like, oh, maybe he's taking that 35 million profit or he's rolling it. He wants to use that extra cash to exercise shares. Okay, you can come up with whatever narrative you want. It does not matter. All we care about is the repeating sequence and where it's going. We need to know what phase we are in accumulation or distribution to know where the repeating sequence is going to justify to the up or downside, right? And then we get what happens today while we're still in no man's land, right? You get your RK taking maybe half profit, whatever he's doing with those trading execution-wise, we're going to find out soon. The GameStop shareholder meeting, postponed. Perfectly to justify the no action right here in your repeating sequence. It's not coincidence. It is just a path that has to fulfill. Now, my thesis currently is that your March POI, which is basically your last week of June, is going to play to the downside, okay? Which would take GameStop basically down to your, where you have to, it's based off liquid test, right? The algorithm. So your next liquid zone and your demand zone is here, which is your 19 range, right? Now, your June 21st strike on OPEX, that 20 strike is still loaded. It's like 177,000 open interest, something absurd. It is very unlikely that dealers are going to allow that to end up in the money. Or they could pull something very, very sinister. And I'm going to show you right now. They could basically keep the stock above, where's that 20 level? Here's your 20 strike, right? They could keep it above right here, something like that, by the 21st to make all of you think that 177,000 OI is going to cause, it has to be settled now the next week, T+1, right? It's going to cause a massive rip. And then they dump it next week, right? To justify your March fractal to the inverse. that would be the most sinister fucking thing I've ever seen. So instead of dropping it below 20 to just nullify those calls, they keep it above 20 and then they drop it next week off of some pre-planned news to justify the March repeating fractal, okay? Which, right, is here. Okay, so look how perfect it is. It is perfection. Algorithmic math coordinated with mainstream media news justification to make sure that this entire sequence plays out as planned. This is why I believe Cohen's in on it, Kitty's in on it. The guy from Citron that's saying, oh, I'm shorting it, I'm not shorting it, I'm shorting it, I'm not shorting it. His time news releases also can justify this fractal algorithmic movement, right? You got this upside here. I believe, I think I missed one. This is where I think he tweeted, the Citron guy, saying that he wasn't shorting GameStop anymore. And then you get your what? You get your blast, 36% blast to the upside. Guys, it is what it is, okay? I'm just calling the data how it is. Don't get fucking emotional. I don't care what your opinion is. This is fact. This is fact. It's not opinion, okay? The fractal repeats over and over and over again, and news has to come out if it's a very important security to justify those moves so it makes sense to you, right? Humans, it makes sense to you and me and everyone else, the guys at Yield Boss, right? It has to make sense, because if it doesn't make sense, then everyone's going to know that the system is fraudulent. We know it's fraudulent, but mainstream media doesn't say it's fraudulent. The rest of America doesn't say it's fraudulent because they don't really know. But we know, and this is your proof. Okay, so if you guys have any more questions, right? I love you very much. I'm very happy to explain this to you, but you have to get it. You have to get it, because whatever happens during the remainder of the fractal, in your March sequence, in your next June sequence, it will all be justified by pre-planned news, okay? So what I want for you, the guys that are really good with fundamentals, really good with news, you go through all the news that you have. You work with me. Like I have Kate and myself, the guys at Yield Boss, we have the repeating sequence like damn near down, dude. If we can just put together the narrative with the repeating sequence, guys, we can time every single squeeze like that. And we can hit every single one of these together, okay? I will guide you through the entire sequence. All meme stock information will always be free. You want to know where the rest of the stocks are going, the mid caps, yields, bonds, currency, commodities, all that good stuff, right? You got to be in the Yield Boss server. But this stuff is always going to be free. So listen, I love you guys to death. I have been put in thousands and thousands of hours. So just bear with me. I know it's confusing. I know it's complex. But together, we can figure it out, okay? Hit me up if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you guys soon.